much about the vaults. They are essentially GLP deconstructed. So each of the underlying assets in GLP are broken out and allows a user to maintain the exposure to that asset while still benefiting from the yield of GLP. And discussions that, and somebody's already asked a question on the AMA Discord channel, is about trader OI and basically the wins and losses of the traders. And this is, something that always has to be discussed. If you're talking about a GLP derivative product, you have to talk about the trader P&L because it's a large part of it. We could go into the details and give our view of where we stand for that, and our latest opinion on trader OI. And hopefully that will answer the question when we get into the details there. But, deconstructed GLP, so that means stable, like a USDC vault, ETH, Bitcoin, Link, and Uni vaults, all with the underlying exposure. And again, just a quick summary, because I know it's been a while since we talked about the vaults, and there are some new people. The real benefit of the strategy that we've developed, and we've spent considerable time on this, is three main things. The first one is making sure those underlying assets track one-to-one in price exposure. So the ETH vault will track to the price of ETH. If you deposit 1 ETH, that's what the numeraire, the price per share calculation, is in to track, and we'll maintain all delta exposure to that as closely as possible. And trading strategy, we're able to get really close exposure to that. And so the second one is, maximizing the yield, the capital efficiency of the allocation. That means more money in GLP and less money in hedges. And the third is a fee reduction across the board, was a primary goal. And it works out really well by having these vaults offset the exposure that they have, and allows us to not only save fees on covering the exposure, like if you think about a delta neutral strategy, like there are some floating around, instead of having to cover or hedge the volatile assets of ETH and Bitcoin exposure, we can offset those with our ETH and Bitcoin vaults attached. And so not only saving on the hedging costs, but any action from swapping assets, adjusting positions, eliminating, open and close fees, having a single set of hedges for all of the vaults, and it ends up being a significant savings in any fees required for hedging. And so, all of this is definitely tied to the balance of our own TVL in the vaults. The more closely that the TVL of our vaults matches the actual GLP asset allocation, the lower the cost of hedging into almost free, if perfectly balanced. But if you're familiar with GLP, there is always fluctuation in the assets, in the weighting, and with trader P&L that affects that as well. And so, but it's it's really something to behold. And we've got we've had CloseNet. Not CloseNet. It's mainnet closed test, where we're running actually on Arbitrum mainnet, and it's really something to see how little capital is required, along with the internal algorithm for internal netting and settlement. How little capital is required for actual hedging. And it's really something. It's really something special. So, without further delay, I am going to hand it over to Mr. Grumpy Pants, who is probably the most loved person contributor, and he's going to give you some updates on community, including AMAs in the future and comms in the future. So, Grumpy, you want to take over?
Yep, can do, and I'll keep my spiel a little short so we can get into the juicy treasury and vault stuff a little later on. So as you guys can tell, we're we're finding our rhythm again for the AMAs. We're thinking about doing them bi-weekly leading up into vault launch, but we'll go ahead and update you guys on that as we decide. And as you guys know, prior to kind of all the madness that happened, we had a bunch of joint AMAs scheduled with GMX, Arbitrum, Factor DAO, stuff like that. and we're hoping to put those back on the schedule with the new launch as well. We're going to have a brand new set of docs ready to integrate and push to the website and have you guys ready to read, probably early next week. And then lastly, I'm excited to say this, but the weekly newsletter will be coming back. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that. We're going to be writing it exactly how it is, and then just adding like the DAO news and stuff like that, because that'll be a lot of stuff to go over once that really gets up and running. But yeah, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Steven.
All right. So again, end of January, 4.56 million. End of February, we had about 4.4 million. So, for the month of February, it was about 147K loss, down about 3.2%. And considering, how much was sold onto the Treasury liquidity pool, I would say everything was pretty well in line. And, that really just had to do with how our pools were set up with concentrated liquidity, so that, not as much as the Treasury funds are up for grab, when there is a sell off like this. So I think that's just one of the benefits of Uniswap version 3. And overall, for the gross yield for the month was about 95K, which constitutes about 27.5% APR, and that's about in line with previous yield. And we distributed about 4.8 ETH to the Maridators, and that was when it was decided to stop doing that. As everybody knows, everything is now automated through, for the claim for the marinate. Anybody can trustlessly claim those yields. And then also for the month of February, just so everybody knows, no comp was paid. Obviously we're in an interesting situation where we are deciding exactly what the right thing to do is, right? And we're still trying to clarify, what we are going to be doing going forward. So just trying to do, the least amount to satisfy what, our obligations to the community. And we're just going to go from there. And looking at the liquid runway, 3.3 million, so well over a year worth of runway there. So everything is in a good spot where we do have liquidity positions. You can see using like Revert Finance, you can see like liquidity, where our liquidity pool starts and finishes. And if you want to get more information on that, feel free to DM me. But overall, everything is basically set and forget. And our GLP position is not hedged, but we feel that it's good enough to be, because it's such a good hedge on the market. It's actually good to just hold it for now, and we'll see going forward. So that's basically it for me.
If Kits is here, we definitely wanted to have him talk a bit about all of his efforts that he has contributed into transition back into a more formalized DAO governance structure, and bringing a lot more legitimacy to the DAO governance and voting process, including his latest proposal. Kits, are you available to speak right now?
Yeah, I can jump in. I'm sorry, I was running a little bit late coming out of a meeting. But I think just kind of maybe most helpful is to go over where I think like the state of governance is, and like how it applies to the DAO, and then like kind of where I hope to see us build from there, and where I think that conversation goes. Right? Like the fundamental thing with governance, or with the formation of a DAO, or with trying to figure out this like really old problem, which is how do we have large bodies of individuals with disparate points of view and different levels of like investment and different levels of like skill or care, like how much they actually want to be involved. Like how do we make them coordinate, and how do you find a common ground that they can communicate? And so with that in mind, like I think governance always starts from a place that has to be relatively small. which I think was really the case here, where you have to make something very lightweight and very composable and very adaptable and flexible. And so a lot of the things that I looked at with that initial proposal, I ended up referencing a lot of like Redacted and Uniswap and Argonne Court, and like the baseline like numbers aside, like there was a lot of conversation around quorum. Aside from the numbers, like the entire structure was really made to be something to build on. Like governance is never in an end state. I don't actually think there probably is an end state for governance. I think it's like an ever evolving and changing thing that we build upon in layers and layers. And that the best we can do, or like the best thing to do at the start, is to build the foundation and build the floor of the house before you get to all the rest of the stuff. And I think that was really what was accomplished, right? Is that it's not perfect, and it probably never will be perfect, because that is very much a dream, but it is something that is workable and flexible and can be applied in a lot of different ways. And I think most relevant maybe to like this specific case is like the DAO and its structure and the turnout that we've had, and all of these other things, like they all really represent a large body politic of people, right? Like that is one of the most important things that a DAO can do, is to find and assert and claim legitimacy as quickly as possible, because you never want a situation, right, where things look scattered or disparate, or it's the DAO isn't representing the will of the people. And I think that like very much is the case here, is what we've achieved. And I think that's very evident in the turnouts, even when we consider like the imperfect or like rough back of the napkin calculations around quorum. I think that they still indicate a really substantial mandate that the community has handed a DAO. And so then with that in mind, it's like, right, where do we go from there? And like, how do we continue to improve on the DAO? And the things we need for that are, you need data, and you need data that is like accurate and specific and recent, right? Like if you look at previous snapshots from even any protocol, ones that are much larger, ones that are much smaller, they've all kind of tailored themselves around their data sets, or rather the ones that are like really successful at what they do. And so the more data that can be produced, the more accurate that the framework can become. And it actually matters less for proposals really than it does for the framework. Like that accuracy should inform the baseline voting process, or if tweaks are needed to be made for administrative things or whatever. So that's one thing, a direction we head in. And then the other one is really a reduction in friction. So already the on-chain voting process is inherently like a friction process, right? Like you have to click this and click that and collect your wallet, and you have to cast this, and there's X amount of time. And really with the initial structure, what I wanted was something that kind of balanced both the ability to move quickly, and right, that's something like ceding day-to-day powers to a team, or keeping time periods relatively low when compared to other things, or not having like executive committee votes or working group votes, but at the same time building in enough room for discussion and conversation. And so I think that process will continue to refine, and that's really what the governance support team idea is centered around, is like, okay, well, if a lot of people have ideas, well, we don't want to wind up in a pancake swap situation, right, where their governance board is literally people like begging for money or being like, we should fund this, or like it's totally off the walls. And neither do we want something incredibly like static, where it's an incredibly long process to get something through, and it's actually a relatively silent governance process. We want a happy medium. So having a team of people who are focused in a completely, and I hope this was clear in the proposal, or in the discussion, is like having a team that is not adjudicating or deciding if a proposal is correct or not, or not deciding if, oh, I actually support this personally, but instead deciding and making things, clean in the sense of like administrative process, and are things being posted correctly, and are things being formatted correctly, and are things following the rubric that we set out for a DAO and for a proposal. I think there's a lot of aversion to maybe some of those things in the crypto space, where people really associate things like bureaucracy or paperwork or procedure with the old world. And I think, to a degree that's correct. But I think that you probably need that level of kind of like an efficient connective tissue that takes something from an idea to a proposal in a way that's like clean and readable and digestible and that people can really like speak to. And so that's the kind of immediate next steps. And I think after that happens, that really kickstarts a process where okay, people can be alerted and informed about new things. People will have assistance and like technical support in how they want to phrase their proposals. I think it just opens up the door for a lot more participation, and it kind of lets us professionalize the process in a little bit, right? So it's not just people posting things; it's people working together with a group of volunteers that get to make something that is presentable and workable. So I think that's kind of the near term things. I don't know if there are any other points. I'm sorry for rambling on that in particularly wanted to touch on, but I think that's kind of the lay of the land as it stands right now.
Yeah, thank you for that detailed description. And I think every token holder really appreciates your efforts for really stepping up and your deep understanding and interest in DAO governance and putting forth the proposal and continuing to help as this evolves. So thank you, kids. And if you could stick around, there might be some questions that holders have, and we'd love to have you share more of your thoughts for some of those questions. And so now I think would be in the interest of time, would be a good time to bring Toki up to talk about some of the vaults, their current development. Yeah, go ahead, Toki.
Hey everyone. Yes. So just going to cover like a brief overview of like where we're up to with the development of the vaults. So I'll start off with the like the status of the audit. So we're in like the final stages of the audit right now. It's just like essentially like we've got a report back, and we're going over all the response from the audit team and putting together basically our formal response and fixes to some of the issues that they found. And after that, we'll get like a formalized audit report, and then we've planned to like pass it off to some individual auditors too. One of those is Coda, a community member. Gigabrain should be able to help just like give a final review of the code to check if there's any other small issues that he may pick up. Now I'll move on to a bit of the development side of things internally. We were like set back a few weeks due to like all the recent events. Everyone's pretty well aware of. So right now, I guess like the last few things that we really need to like tie up on our vault side are we're putting together like an internal analytics page. So that's to help us kind of like monitor like the status of the vaults and some really key metrics that we need to watch to ensure like safety of depositors and that we're getting like the most out of these vaults. Some of the things we've put together are like just the same metrics that we were tracking in the back testing, like maximum delta exposure for each of the vaults, to make sure we're not taking on too much delta in the vaults and we're rebalancing at the right times. Another key one is obviously like price per share, and a few of the other ones are like just how the internal P&L between the vaults is tracking. Right now we're tracking like the internal P&L of the vaults, and one of the things that we're looking to change with the current implementation is actually to make sure that when we're kind of like rebalancing these vaults, we want to like settle the internal P&L much more similarly to how a normal perp would trade. And by doing this, it ensures that like the GLP held by each of these vaults maintain sort of it doesn't. So like some vaults can't kind of steal off others. So we're going to be like representing like each internal position will be much similar to how a perp would actually be, which just overall ensures like better performance for each of the vaults and like more consistent returns to what what holding actual GLP would be like. But yeah, like final thing I wanted to cover is just like general performance of the vaults and how we're kind of seeing them perform right now. We've been running them for, I think it's like the past 3 weeks now after some updates. And yeah, all the vaults are performing like well in line with the backtesting data that we shared late last year. So I guess that's super positive that our backtesting data is like consistent with how they're performing now. But I will say that like that is change that can change depending on like market conditions and just and how we're seeing like if traders win a lot, then yeah, like the vaults will take a bit of a drag, but overall like GLP tends to perform really really well. So yeah, that's basically it.
Great, yeah, thank you. So yeah, the audit, like Toki said, the audit's been going really well. And kind of in the final phase for that, sending the response, having the final testing before the report is generated, and again, looking to have third-party devs come in for a review too. Always a big focus of ours, and have definitely spent a lot of time on internal testing ourselves, which is ultimately, the most important thing. Anyways, I think that was a nice, 25-minute period. I would love to open up for some questions. If anybody has any questions, I think next time we're going to use a stage for this. I think maybe typing in the chat, or we could try it where people can unmute and ask a question, but keep it orderly. If someone's speaking, please let them finish the question before unmuting. Yeah, this is an open call for some questions. Okay, and I'll go ahead and start with some of the questions in AMA questions. So the first one is from Kataru. It says questions regarding the delta neutral vaults. He understands that we are not going to hedge against trader P&L from the past EMAs. He's wondering if this stance still stands based on updated backtesting results, the more recent trader P&L performances, especially for the last 3 months. Rage Trade is going to introduce their next delta neutral vault and partially and fully hedge against trader P&L. Apparently, they have backtested their strategies for hedging against trader P&L and would bring better performance results. So this is a big one because, like I said before, you can't talk about a GLP derivative product without talking about the trader P&L. The nice thing about our vaults is we have the flexibility with the internal netting algorithm already to add the open interest as exposure. And so no change is needed in like the underlying smart contracts or vaults to be able to handle this. And this is a big focus of our testing so far and continued testing. And certainly the months from the end of 2022 and the start of 2023, traders have won a lot more than they did in most of 2022. And so it definitely is in our best interest as Umami DAO to fully test and make sure and do a comparison of the performance of not hedging OI and hedging OI. And we will definitely run the comparisons and make a decision and include the community on this thought too. And I think that's the great part of having a structure that's more receptive is presenting things and being able to discuss. But of course, it's one thing to just say, oh, why don't you hedge trader OI, right? Why don't you and Rage Trade? It's like, oh, well, now we're going to add, fully hedging trader P&L. Well, it's pretty complicated, or there's more to think about than just oh, I'm going to flip on this hedging switch. So one of the things is when you hedge, you're essentially taking the same side as traders, right? You're taking the same side as the skew. So if everybody's short because banks are blowing up and we think it's going to go down, that would mean jumping on the short side. And that also means jumping in when liquidity might be scarce, funding rates might be higher and higher, and increased costs on jumping on that side. And the other thing it does when you hedge open interest or ultimately the trader P&L is that you cancel out all of the times where traders lose. You cancel that out. You don't get the benefit when traders lose now. It washes out. And so, there does have to be a lot of consideration. And in a few months stretch of traders winning, I think it would be unwise to do a knee-jerk reaction and think, oh, the last 3 months traders have won slightly, or moderately. We've got to just flip the switch and start hedging this. It needs to be well thought out, because there is an advantage of being the counterparty for leverage trading, along with all of the fees associated with it. And we will run the back test. Our first back test definitely showed it was a huge advantage to be the counterparty and leave open interest unhedged. But if the data points us to another direction when we run these latest tests, including when we have more data for March, we will be considering that. So kind of a long-winded answer, but we're open to it. We will be back testing it, and we will share the results when we have them. The next question is, Connor, do the vaults factor in trader P&L when doing the accounting for internal vault rebalances? So Toki mentioned on this too, and this question should be, so it's a decision that we have, right? And in previous AMAs, and I think right now we're leaning towards not hedging for a trader P&L. So if traders do win, what you'll see is a slight drag on the performance, maybe a slight decrease. But the big thing about these vaults are, we're reducing hedging costs considerably, and we still soak up as much GLP investment as we can, which gets compounded and thrown back into the vaults. And as we've seen a lot of months, there's been some fantastic returns. I know this week was a little low, but the last few weeks, we had like a 50% week or something in there, which is incredible in returns. You're talking about over $400 million in assets in GLP and getting a week of 50% annualized APR returns. And so, that's basically the gist of it. And when you deposit 1 ETH into the vault, the way that you'll track the performance of our vaults is a measurement called price per share, which is common in these tokenized receipt vaults, where the price per share is your underlying. So if you invest, the first person to invest 1 Ethereum in the vault with no other person, you'll receive one share back. And excuse me. And as the price per share goes up or down, that's how much your investment in the underlying priced in ETH will be going up and down. And on the UI, we're going to display a graph of basically the underlying asset, Ethereum, overlaid with the price per share of the vault. And so it's kind of like, how much better were you off in the ETH vault than just holding ETH? And you can see the benefits from the price per share. And it's a lot easier to track the performance of the vaults to the underlying that way. Yeah, good question so far, guys. Zabaub says, assuming the vaults are profitable, what kind of other products do you think you'll be able to launch? Assuming it needs to be built on top of a multi-asset pool so that Umami can launch individual vaults. So we have a lot of ideas. We've got some really talented people from, strategy to smart contract development, and we've got a lot of ideas, and I think there's a lot of possibilities. Right now, everybody's focused on the vaults and getting them launched as, kind of as was promised for many, many months. And, that's definitely the focus. And after that, I think there'll be a lot of discussion, and I think there could be a great chance to have input from the community with presented some ideas and options that people on the team have. We definitely have some ideas that are more fine, more fleshed out than others, right? And some include ETH staking and other options, but I think we want to keep all the doors open now and kind of reevaluate that a little bit closer to the launch. And then, the legal issues. I don't really want to get into too much of this yet, but I think we are working definitely to follow best practices and follow kind of some of the best practices of other DAOs, successful DAOs and leading DAOs doing. And so, we'll keep that updated, but I don't think we're going to get into too much details about that kind of thing. But yeah, forward looking, always looking to improve in every area. And Stan3 Web asked when white paper. Soon. We're working on it, and we want to collect a little bit more data, definitely. And we're in this nice phase right now where we literally have a faucet of data, right, from our subgraph of GMX at 1 second resolution, and then from our vaults actually running live on Arbitrum right now, in a closed manner, giving us a wealth of data to present. And then we also want to put it through our sims where we can simulate, like I mentioned before, trading the hedging the trader OI and seeing the performance differences in as long a time frame as we can, and including most recent data. So when we get that compiled, we will definitely share it, and it will be before the vault launch. But then Kitsune or Stan3 Web was kind of adding on to the question about off-chain, on-chain structure. I really like LexPunk. LexPunk is a fantastic resource, and what you shared is a fantastic resource that we've been reviewing and discussing with some people as well. So thank you for sharing that, and it's a great read for anybody that's interested in DAOs and the legal side of things. When will the snapshot for the governance supporter be up? Really soon. Yeah, we talked to Kits. There's a couple things we wanted to improve in the snapshot, and that's going to be ready to go at any time. ETA on the vaults. We'll try to get that soon. I don't want to commit to a date right now, but things are running well on the main test, the closed main test. There's definitely a few things that we'd like to get finished, and obviously there's the audit, which is a big part. We need to wait for the final response and report from the audit before launching. But we will definitely keep you updated with updates on progress, and the first major milestone to watch for is probably going to be that white paper that will be coming. Any changes to the LPs? I'm going to. Stephen, are you still around?
Yeah. So we have like $270,000 dollars worth of Umami in the LP. That's just the value that it's worth at now, and they're just set up in different ranges, and obviously the ranges that were set are at much higher prices. So for now, what you're seeing is actually just community liquidity, and once the prices get higher into the ranges, they're just there. For a little bit more concentration, you'll see less slippage when we get into those ranges. I believe it's around the $15-16 range is when our first LP ranges really starts. So yeah, that's about it.
Nice, thanks for the update. And then, for those of you that aren't in a place where you could read the AMA chat, Toki added some great commentary about the question I was talking about earlier. In a comparison to Rage Trade, Toki says that one thing to add is our vaults are very different to Rage Trades, and we rebalance much more frequently. Due to our implementation, fees paid by the vaults are much lower, giving us better performance, less drag in the vaults, and the events that traders win. And that goes back to kind of those core three things: maintaining the delta exposure to the underlying asset, increasing capital efficiency by maximizing how much GLP we can be in across all 5 vaults, and then slashing fees as much as we can by using internal actions, from hedging to open trades, closing trades, things like that. And so, yeah, Staker said, can you describe the mechanics for how Umami marinators will earn from vault yields? Yeah, there will be a performance fee and a management fee. The final implementation is going to be slightly different than a 220, but the fees are going to be split. Half of the fees will be sent to marinators to stake, and then half of the fees from the AMA and performance will be sent to the treasury, and which again, the treasury is used to invest, play for runway, but it's also ultimately half of that yield is also paid out to marinators as well. So growing the treasury, is kind of beneficial for everybody in the protocol. And so yeah, the Vault TVL will be a fantastic thing for token holders. Notice a lot of mercenary farmers with these vaults. How we incentivize long-term vault usage. There is a what we call a slow release contract. Slow release contract. We mentioned it quite a while ago, but it's basically a contract where people can take their receipt tokens. So you enter one of the vaults, let's say the ETH vault, and you get the receipt token. You have a choice of locking that ETH token into a contract that will get additional yield. The additional yield is based on how many other people are deciding to stake in the slow release contract. It's called slow release because you'll be getting the boosted yield until you decide to withdraw. And at that point, you initiate the withdrawal. It will be a 30-day queue, so you'll wait 30 days. And then at the end of the queue, you're free to redeem your tokens for the underlying, including all the bonus tokens that you received. And one of the questions is, where does the additional yield come from? The additional yield is at every rebalance when fees are taken. The fees are taken first and sent to a contract to automatically distribute those to staked marinators in the treasury. And then after that, a very small allocation of the total yield will be collected and sent out to the slow release contract. And it's done in such a manner that, even 2 or 3% of the performance for that period being sent out, if there's not a lot of people in the slow release contract, it can be a considerable, and it's variable, and the market determines, right? So if not a lot of people are staking long term in the slow release contract, then there's a huge boost, encourages a lot more people to do that. And these vaults are really these are long term vaults, right? When you talk about the APRs that we listed, this isn't a stick in for a week and pull out. There's no leveraged GLP gains like with Jones, where the risk on asset's going to have over 100% APR, right? This is a deconstruction of GLP in a maximized yield way and a minimized fee way. And so these are really for long-term holders, and so it really aligns well to have this slow release contract. And the benefit is it actually helps the performance of everybody, because as the capital, as the TVL and the vaults are sticky and staying in the vaults, we're going to have to spend less on the hedging, less on rebalance costs, hedging costs, minimizing fees, and so it boosts performance for everybody. And so it's easy to justify a slight bonus for people that are willing to stake for this. And so there is no minimum timeline to stay in the vault. Like if you deposit in the slow release vault, you can initiate your withdrawal the next day, but there is just that 30-day waiting period for the additional boost in yield. So a lot of spam in the AMA channel here. Yeah, you can put Jingleheimer is saying, can you do half and half? You will be able to put part of your receipt tokens into the flow release vault and leave some of them out. That's no problem. These are, and the receipt tokens are ERC 4626 tokens. which are fully extensible to ERC20 tokens. So these are fungible. You can send them to wallet addresses. Other protocols can use them for whatever they want at that point, right? These are ERC20 tokens, and they will, at the time that when you want to withdraw, you can go to the vault and redeem these tokens for the underlying at the price per share. Partial withdrawals, yes, you can do a partial withdrawal. So if you put 100% of your tokens in the slow release contract and you say, I want to pull half of them out of the slow release contract, but keep the other half in there, you are free to do that, yes. All right, so I want to thank everybody for the time. If there's any more questions or anybody in the chat, this is kind of a final call for questions, and it could be about anything. I think Grumpy wants some questions if anybody has some questions for him. How he's doing after the car accident.
Yeah, anything, any community side stuff? Or any DAO stuff for kits?
Yeah, I do think Kits had to run actually, but
Oh.
but I'm sure he'd be happy to answer in the AMA channel whenever he has a chance. All right, yeah, I don't think there's any more questions. So thank you guys for tuning out, and again, yeah, we'll definitely be hosting more AMAs in the future, and just watch for channel updates for the dates and times, and yeah, plenty of really exciting stuff coming this month leading up to the vault launch. So thank you guys, and we'll talk soon.